Second speaker for today is Nicolo Cesa Bianchi, which is a professor of computer science at the University of Milano, and he was the president of the Association for Computational Learning and a member of the steering committee for the Network of Excellence Pascal II. He held visiting position with UC Santa Cruz, Graz Technical University, the Ecole Normale Superieure, Google, and Microsoft Research. He also received the Google Research Award and the Xerox University Affairs Committee Award. His research interests focus on theory and application of machine learning, sequential optimization, and algorithmic game theory. On this topic, he published 2 monographs that are already considered as Bibles: Prediction Learning and Games, and Regret Analysis of Stochastic and Non-Stochastic Multi-arm Bandit Problems. He has over 150 indexed publications, including more than 40 journal papers, and overall, he has been cited more than 10,000 times.
Well, this was not supposed to be read aloud. It was just, appear in some corner of a dark website. But anyways, thanks a lot for this wonderful introduction. I wonder who gave you these great words. And thanks a lot to Crito for organizing this very nice workshop, and of course for inviting me here. Machine learning in the real world is really intimidating, especially if you're an academic, so you're living your own bubble like many people these days, and maybe you don't have, these days it's people who do machine learning in the companies, in industry, they have a huge advantage because companies have data and can hire the best people, the money to hire the best people. So as academics, we are struggling to keep up with what's happening in the real world. So sometimes, our bubble floats and touches upon reality, and we sort of get a little bit of epiphany of what could be useful or could not be useful here. So this is all a disclaimer. I'm going to talk about some theory I designed and just by chance appears to be applicable to something really cool, which is real-time bidding that happens around also here. And so the idea is that this is something that happens all the time on your back when you're browsing. And so whenever any user in the world visits any website of its choice, it creates an impression, which is an opportunity to put a banner, to put some ads on the website. So in a few milliseconds, that takes to upload the web page and to show it to the users, some very complicated process happens. So there's an auction. And so a call for bids is sent to ad exchanges, and the ad exchanges query for advertisers who have the opportunity of putting their advertisement on to full impression, so to show to the user. And the advertiser will submit the bids, then the winner is selected, and the winner ad will be displayed to the user website. So this is done, of course, all robotically. There are no humans involved in this process, which is really complex and really quick. And this process happens millions of times per choose your time unit appropriately small. And so there's a huge amount of data being churned out by all the actors that are involved in this process. So it's, again, it's a completely algorithmical process. There are algorithms doing the bidding, algorithms doing algorithms on the buyer side, algorithms on the seller side, so the algorithms that are on the publisher side, and there are algorithms in the ad exchange that are just running the auction. So this is a great opportunity for doing some clever algorithmic design and to come up with ideas for adaptively choose the parameter of the auctions in order to maximize someone's profit. All right. So the staple of this kind of auctions is the famous, celebrated second price auction with a reserve price. So this is an auction that is used, or at least they claim to use it by most other exchanges. And because it has some very nice theoretical properties that are have been elucidated by the seminal work by Meyerson, who won the Nobel Prize in economics for that. So indeed, for the bidder, bidding the true value is a dominant strategy. Okay, so the bidder has no incentive in shading his bids in order to get a good at the value which is smaller than the value it's the true value for him. Okay, and so this remains. So this is in a second price auction. So the truthful the incentive for the bidder is to bid the true value. Okay, so how does this work? It works as follows. So here's a little plot showing the bids. This is an auction. So these blue dots are different bids. This is the price scale normalized between 0 and 1. So the relevance bid are the highest bid and the second highest bid. Okay, and on this axis, I'm showing the reserve price. The reserve price is the price under which the seller is not willing to sell a good. So if you can think of the reserve price as an additional bid that is the seller's bid, and if no one is above the seller's bid, the seller is just withdrawing the auction, and the auction is not clearing. Nothing is being sold. So here's the curve which shows the profit, the revenue of the bidder depending on the reserve price. Sorry, the revenue of the seller depending on the reserve price that the seller decides for the auction. So if the seller puts a reserve price in this part here, which is above the highest bid is below the reserve price, the auction doesn't clear out, so nothing is being sold, and the profit for the seller is 0. Okay, if on the other hand, the reserve price that the seller decides for the auction is below the second highest bid, then the highest bidder wins the auction, but the price he pays is the second price, and this is what realizes this is what the theorem requires. So the price paid by the winner of the auction, which is the highest bidder, is the second price. So he has a reduced price, which is the way we create incentive in order to for the bidder to bid its true value. All right. And on the other hand, if the seller chooses a price, a reserve price, or which is called also floor, which is in between the highest and the second highest bid, the auction will clear at the reserve price. So the highest bidder will win, and we will pay the reserve price. Again, the maximum between the second highest bid and the reserve price. So this is a region where the seller is happy, so the seller would like to put the reserve price as close as possible to the highest bid, but not be above that, because otherwise he won't clear the auction and the revenue will be 0. So this is the function for each individual auction that the seller is trying to maximize. Okay? And there are some features that are available to the seller. For instance, these come along with each auction. We can know the location and the carrier if the user is mobile. We can know the publisher. The seller will be a seller on behalf of some publisher. The publisher will have maybe several sections of your website, so the ad will be put on a certain section, and the ad will be put on a certain position of the web page, for instance, on top, on the middle, on the side, and so on and so forth. And there are timestamps, a day of the week, it's a weekend, it's at the end of the month, it's Christmas, or any kind of seasonality you would like to consider. We'll talk more about that. So this is some actual data So this is each dot here is an auction that has been run. You don't see time here, so you have no idea of the ordering of the chronology of this, but here is the highest bid, and this is the second highest bid, so there's nothing here, of course. And you see there is this is run, again, is run by algorithms. You see some structures here. And you see there's especially you see there's a lot of opportunity for the seller in order to play with reserve price. You see there's a pretty long tail of auctions in which there's a very highest bid and a kind of small second highest bid. So the seller has a good opportunity in putting a reserve price in between these two numbers, the highest bid and the second highest bid, in order to clear the auction and to sell the item at the reserve price. Okay, and if the reserve price is close to the highest bid, it will get some good revenue. Okay, so this is the kind of data we are looking at, and we can define a formal auction model. Yes, please.
Can I quickly ask? So where do these structures come from? Does it mean that some of the
well, some you know, they sort of insist on some specific numbers as bids. What is the reason for that? I don't know. I don't know. Well, we will talk a little bit about it, but that depends on the algorithms that are deciding the bids. And this, yes.
Is it time consistent?
What?
Is it time consistent? If I would take the same picture for another 1.2 million price auctions in, say, 2 weeks, will it look the same?
Yeah. There are some.
I mean, roughly the same, of course. Not
yeah, roughly the same. Roughly the same. This is pretty much what you expect to get. Yes, I would say. Okay. So the formal auction model is as follows. So you can view it as a repeated game between the seller and the buyers. So the seller will choose a floor, a reserve price, so a point on this line, and the bidders will put their bids, and these two actions are simultaneous. So the floor is hidden from buyers, and the bids are hidden from sellers, and then the auction is run. And the bidder with the highest bid will win the auction, and the seller revenue is computed with this formula, which is just a graph of this curve here. Okay, so this is what happens. So we want to study this problem. So most of the talk will deal with a setup in which we make non-stochastic assumptions of the mechanism generating the bids. There are algorithms out there that are designed to make these bids, and we don't know how these algorithms are designed, and it's very hard to come out with a decent probabilistic model for the bids. So a safe assumption say, okay, we are agnostic, we don't make any assumption on the way this bid is generated. There's some arbitrary mechanisms, probably is not stochastic, and so that's what we are facing. And what we are assuming, which is true at least for one odd exchange which got me the data, which is AppNexus, is that after each auction, the seller will observe the revenue, which is reasonable, but also the highest bid. Okay. And all right, so this is when I saw this for the first time. This is great. I mean, I've been doing online learning for the past 20 years, and this is a great thing. I mean, it's like a huge volume of streaming data, so it's the best case for me. And when you tell practitioners, they say, "What's the problem here? You just do mini batching, and you're just periodically updating your model, and this is going to work. There's no need of any online learning here." So. Well, this is a real issue, and this is the bubble view, and this is the real view. And so it's, I'm going to elaborate on this sort of a dilemma, is that online learning will offer a very elegant, crisp, and theoretically founded solution, and but sometimes, it's difficult to implement because of practical constraints, which I'm typically not aware of, but whenever I talk to someone who's doing these things for real, they tell me, well, I mean, it's not really easy to run this kind of algorithms for real. Okay, so I'm not solving this, but you just, this is another disclaimer. Okay, so now I love this beautiful setup. It's very crisp. I have a sequence of bits. The only relevant bits that determine the revenue are the highest bid and the second highest bid. All right, so the revenue is a function of the floor, the reserve price, and these two relevant bits. And I am the seller. I want to sell these things and make maximize this revenue over a sequence of auctions. So I want to come up with a sequence of possibly randomized floors where each floor will depend on my past revenues and the past highest bids, which are the numbers I observe after each auction. So I can decide my next floor based on the past information I observe. And, because this is a repeated game and because I'm doing online learning, I want to use as a measure of performance what's called regret, which is the difference between the actual revenue I can get if I run a certain sequence of floors over a given sequence of bids, which is just an individual sequence of bids because we are not making any assumption. And the expectation here is just with respect to the randomization of the player, of the seller. There's no other randomness going on here in this model. And I want to compare that with the revenue I could have gotten on the same sequence of auction if I had consistently played the best possible reserve, the best possible floor. Okay, this is a standard notion of regret, and this is what maybe it's not. We'll discuss whether this is the most appropriate thing to use or not. We will make some observations later on, but for now, we'll stick to it. Oh. All right, this is the first one, yeah. So first of all, a few facts of life here. So we can assume that bits will have some fixed range. If we have bits of $1 million, then we are blown out of the water. I mean, this is very hard to keep up. So there's some fixed range of the bits. Maybe you think everything is normalized within the unit interval. And the regret of, so even if the seller is just using an arbitrary, random floor in each auction, the regret cannot grow more than linearly with time because everything happens in a bounded range, and everything and the function, the revenue function is of this shape, so it doesn't blow up. Okay, this goes the slope of this is 1. So right, everything is nice. Okay, too much. So yeah, so the regret cannot grow more than linearly. And we can prove a lower bound that even if we give all possible relevant information to the seller, even if the seller knows everything after each auction, he knows the relevant bids after each auction, and even if we are constrained in bidding stochastically, we can still build, design and nasty bid distributions that will force a regret of square root of t to the seller. Okay, so even in a stochastic case, the seller cannot have the regret of the seller cannot grow slower than that for certain bid distributions. So this is our playground between linear and square root of t, and we want to achieve something as close as possible to that, even when we are facing non-stochastic bids. So this is our chance. This is our challenge. So, okay, so I'm using a very simple strategy that will give nice results. And the strategy is based on a very natural approach, is partitioning the floors. So again, assume all prices between 0 and 1. So you partition the floors in k bins and use only the smallest floor in each bin. And the reason why you do that will be hopefully apparent in a few minutes. And then what you do in each action, you randomize the choice of the floor to play from this set of floors that are defined for the bins. And you do the randomization is based on the past performance of each floor in the auctions. So how do we do that in practice? We borrow an idea from Shai in real time, which is importance sampling. And so we do the following. So this is called an algorithm which I dubbed the XP3 RTB, with lack of fantasy. And please give me a better name. And so the algorithm will randomize over this grid of reserve prices, and the randomization will be proportional to the exponent of the expected revenue for each single bid. So the probability with which I play a certain floor in the grid is exponentially proportional to the past revenue of that floor in the auctions, in the past auctions. Okay. So the problem is I don't always observe the revenue of a certain floor. I play a certain floor and I get a revenue for that floor. Maybe I'm not able to compute the revenue for all the other floors because I didn't play them, okay? So what I do is I use importance sampling, as I said. So if I observe the revenue of a certain floor, then I estimate it with that divided by the probability of observing that revenue. And this is the importance weighting scheme that Shai was also already talking about. And otherwise, I'm being pessimistic in this case. I'm giving 0 to the revenue for a floor which I didn't observe. Okay, so this is an estimator which is unbiased for the revenue. It's very easy to see because this is if this happens, this is 0, and if this happens, the probability with this happen is exactly the denominator. So in expectation, these two things will cancel. And the variance of this estimator, which we know from Shai is a crucial thing in order to control your performance, is proportional to the reciprocal of the probability of observing. So one way we can one thing we can do to tame this variance is to pump up the probability of floor 0 in order to reduce the variance. Why do we reduce the variance if we increase the probability of we increase it by gamma, which is the same parameter over here? Why do we do that? Because floor 0 is a revealing action in this auction game, meaning that if I put a floor 0, my revenue, remember the function, my revenue, hello? Okay. If I put the floor 0, my revenue will be the second highest bid. So that's the revenue of the seller. I will observe the highest bid for free. Since I know then the second highest bid and the highest bid, I can reconstruct the revenue for any other floor in the range. So that's why playing floor 0 is a revealing action. It will give me full access to what the opponent is playing, what are the two relevant bits of the opponent, the highest and second highest. Of course, I cannot play 0 too often because otherwise my regret will grow. Maybe 0 is far away from the optimal bid, from the optimal floor. Okay, so I can do that only occasionally. So I have this trade-off. To control the variance, I have to increase the probability of playing a revealing action, but I cannot do too much, otherwise my regret will blow up. And my regret will also blow up if I don't do that enough, because then I have a high variance. So here's the algorithm in action. I will draw this is my grid. I will draw a floor, and maybe it's 0.3. And then I will observe the revenue. Maybe the revenue is 0.3. So that means that I sold at the reserve price. So that means that B2 was somewhere over here, but I don't know where it is. And then I also observe the highest bid, which is 0.6. So now I can reconstruct the revenue of all these things because I know that my bid is here. So I know that the reserve price is here. I know the revenue of this floor. Then I can infer the revenue of other points because I know that the highest bid is here. So I know where my revenue will drop. From here onward, my revenue will be 0, and in this interval will grow linearly. So I reconstruct the revenue of all these floors, and I can update the revenue estimate for all these floors here. So you see, I can update some of them, not all of them. If I play 0, I can update all of them, but I cannot do that too often. So now I can use a little bit of online learning theory in order to bound the regret for this very simple setting in which I have a grid of floors. And the regret will be bounded as follows, where gamma is the unique parameter, where k is the number of bins, and gamma is this unique parameter that I'm that I'm using in the algorithm, which is just this learning rate over here. Okay. So you see, this is kind of a softmax approach. So I'm playing the floor that for which I have the best estimate in the past for the revenue with overwhelming probability, but I'm also giving some non-zero probability to the other floors. And everything, is mediated with respect to this revenue estimate, which is an important weighted estimate. So here is the kind of regret. And now you can already see if I pick gamma of the order 1 of square root of t, I get the square root of t here and square root of t here for this term. So I can already get a square root of t term, square root of t regret, which is nearly optimal with the logarithmic factor, which is nearly optimal. Even in this case, however, I'm not competing against all floors, but I'm only competing against the best floor in the grid. And the best floor in the grid might be far away from, but not as good as the best floor, on the entire interval. And this rate I get here, it's almost as if I observe the revenue for all floors after each auction. So observing just the right part of the revenues is almost as if I observed everything. So I don't lose much in terms of information. So now, what happens if I compete if I measure regret against the best floor in the real interval, then I will have some approximation error. So this is the same bound when I choose the bins of size gamma. So now, K is 1 over gamma. So I have 1 over gamma bins, each one of size gamma. So this is my NK. And now this is the same bound I had before, and now I have an approximation error. So how come the approximation error is of this form? Well, you see, because I played the smallest price in the smallest floor in each bin. And the function looks like that. This function is Lipschitz if I move from left to right. It grows, it's upper bounded, so the increment moving from left to right is upper bounded by the unit, by straight line with slope 1. Okay, so the revenue, this should be a max. Sorry, this should be a max. The revenue of the best floor over the unit of the entire real line, unit interval, it's at most the revenue of the best, the max, the revenue of the best floor on the grid plus gamma, which is the bin size, because exactly of this Lipschitz, so the one-sided Lipschitz property. So I'm lucky here. So I can again pick a square root of t. Now, I will pick gamma like 1 over square root of t, and I sum up everything like here. I get something of the order of ln square root of t, which is almost as good as the lower bound, which was the square root of t. So this is nice, great. And so it's a good algorithm with it's a very simple strategy. I can design my bins and change my bins over time if I have a larger horizon, and I will have a guarantee to control my regret. I will show you some real experiments further on, not a lot. But I want to come up, now I want to, there are lots of issues that I'm just completely ignoring here. And first of all, I have features. So these features are different. They come with each auction. So I have hierarchical features. So there's a hierarchy of a publisher, website, subsection, and placement. Then I have numerical features like user position, timestamps, and I have other features like ad size, user ID, carrier ID, and so on and so forth. So I would like to, to exploit these features in order to make the decision of the floor dependent on the kind of features I have here. So, okay. So one thing you can do, if you can, just say, be a layman, and here is the hierarchy of publishers, placement, website subsection, and placement ID. So I can allocate an instance of this algorithm XP3 RTB on each leaf of this tree, which is the tree of hierarchical features. So I run a fresh instance for every position and every subsection of every publisher website. Okay, so I have many instances of the algorithm, and these instances are not communicating with each other. And okay, then I can see what happens. And all right, these are some experiments. You'll see here, this is time, so number of auctions. So this is some unit of money. You think of what you like, and it doesn't matter. And here is the revenue which you would get by playing zero reserve price. And this is what you get if you play reserve price, something which is actually even simpler than the algorithms, the exponential weighting algorithm. But I'm really using this kind of important sampling update. Okay. So, and then you see that you're, after a little while, the algorithm is able to pick up something in the data, some signal in the data, and the revenue will grow faster than the revenue of the zero reserve price, which means that I'm giving up and don't do anything smart. Okay. So, and these are a combination of placement ID level results. So this is the combined revenue of each Bandit instance running a different Bandit instance for each placement ID in the data. So now you can do something smarter because there's going to be correlations in the bidder behavior, maybe it's not useful to run 3 instances here for each position in the website subsection, but maybe I should run just 1 instance here. And maybe there's even more correlation on this side of the tree, and for all the auctions that happen to be for this specific publisher, I should run just 1 instance of the algorithm at this level. So, right, so if I run separate instances at least, I will ignore correlations. So I want to exploit correlation, but I don't really know how this correlation going on. Maybe this correlation change over time. So can I learn the optimal allocation of Bandit instances over here? And I want to do that online. Again, I don't want to do mini batching. I don't like mini batching. Okay, so I want to compete with the best allocation of Bandit nodes. So in principle, that's easy. You can track historical performance of each Bandit allocation, so Bandit instances allocated to nodes, and choose floors based on this score. You can use the XP4 algorithm, which is another member of the EXP celebrated family of algorithms, which is an algorithm that does this sort of aggregation of bandits for you. The problem is if you have many ways of allocating Bandit instances on this tree. You have exponentially many in the tree size. So that's not really practical to run. However, you can look at information theory. So I'm also advocating a next workshop on information theory in the real world. And you can use the context tree algorithm in order to efficiently do the bookkeeping of the scores via a dynamic programming technique. So basically, whenever you get an auction over here, so this is an auction for a certain publisher, a certain website, an impression, a certain publisher, a certain subsection ID for the publisher, and a certain placement for the impression. So now the only thing you have to do is to update the instances of the Bandit algorithm that are sitting at these nodes. So it's a very economical update, and this update will take care of the bookkeeping for all the possible placements of different instances on these nodes. And you will be able, at the end of the day, to compete with the best allocation of Bandit instances to nodes. So we'll be able to optimally exploit the different correlations by merging Bandit instances at different levels or different depths of this tree. So this is something cool. I'm implementing this with the student, and hopefully we'll get some good results. So now I would like to finish up by giving you some other challenges, which are challenges that I'm not addressing yet, but I'm aware of. First of all, this is the most important, that buyers can become strategic. So, when you repeat auctions and you have buyers that are returning, the buyers may realize that you are tampering with the floor, with the reserve price, and then become strategic. So the algorithms that are deciding the bidders, that are deciding the bids, may actually react to your play with the floor. Okay, now this definition of regret is not good, because this is what you're competing against. What you could have gotten by playing the single best floor throughout the sequence of auctions. But if you had played the single, consistently a single floor throughout the sequence of auctions, the bidders probably would have done something different, right? So the bids would be different if you had played a certain sequence of floors as opposed to if you had played the same floor all over the sequence of auctions. Okay, yes.
So the buyers are told after the event whether they got.
Well, the buyers know whether they won or they lost, and they will know the price they pay, and they might have some additional information that the exchange is providing them, and they might have arbitrary sources of information and arbitrary, computational power in order to estimate what's going on. So you're not. Some of your play might leak to some information about your play might leak to the.
But that information of whether it was a reserve price or a second price would be revealed to them or would not?
I have no idea, but people here will know. So they are in better position to answer. Yeah, this is So yes, so first approach. This is the really algorithmic game theory approach, is to assume a model for the buyer's strategic behavior and you minimize regret with respect to the model. So I'm assuming that the buyer has some bounded computational power, some source of information, and the most rational thing for him with this power and this information is to do that. So this is what I'm doing. This is the kind of competition I'm facing. The approach I would like to pursue is a different one. I'm more agnostic and saying, no, I want to assume I want to assume condition on the flow dynamics. So for instance, I will change my floor, but really slowly and nicely, so that bidders won't actually notice what's going on. All right. So I want, instead of assuming a model for the bidders, I assume that certain conditions, like a slow change of constrained floor dynamics, will keep the bidder oblivious. Okay? So now the challenge is, can you prove anything interesting whenever your exploration is constrained, when you cannot widely move your floor from left to right in the price range? So what I can prove is the other way around. Okay, if I can prove if the bidders are really oblivious, so oblivious that they are stochastic, I can prove that I can get away with very, very small changes in my floor. So the algorithm I showed you requires a floor change after each expression and this impression, and this could be really impossible to do, because maybe the ad exchange only allows us to change the floor every so often and sporadically. So now I can prove the following. If bids are drawn IID for a fixed but unknown distribution, so we are in a stochastic setting now, then I can essentially get an upper bound on the regret, which is almost as good as optimal, with a very, very small number of floor changes. This is really so stochastic setting buys you a lot in terms of being able to move the floor very, very seldom. Okay, this is a result we had last year, and in the stochastic case, it's a completely different problem, because now you have a payoff expectation function, which is a real curve which is out there, is fixed throughout the sequence of auctions, and you want to estimate the price which maximizes this curve. So you can sample in a sequential way to get a rough estimation of this curve, and then you can find a region of prices where the maximum, the optimal floor is belongs to with high probability, and then you can restrict your bidding in this region. Sorry, restrict your sampling in this region by playing the reserve price, which is the least price in the region where you believe the optimal is. Okay, so you recurse, and at the end you can prove that your regret in this stochastic setting will grow at most the square root of t. Okay, a little bit more, so I'm almost done. And I would like to say this is another way in which this notion of regret is disappointing, because there are seasonalities. So this is a plot over time of the best offline reserve price,
in the window of 1,000 auctions. Okay, so I'm looking at here. This point here means that in the past 1,000 auctions in the end of August, mid-August, this was the optimal reserve price I should have used to maximize my profit. And you see there are these wild oscillations which are determined by many factors, including the thing that companies have advertising budgets, and they have to run out of their budgets at the end of the quarter or whatever. Okay, so you will, and then there are Christmas and there are special Thanksgivings and stuff. So there's going to be seasonalities that you cannot ignore. So right, this means, and then the other thing, there are delays. So it's not true that basically you tell the ad exchange, oh, please run my next auction with this floor, and this will happen instantaneously. It's not true. There's going to be some delay. So your algorithms have to be robust to this delay. So they have to be robust to delays and seasonalities at the same time. So luckily, these algorithms are robust to delay, so the regret will increase by a factor of the square root of the delay, which is actually the best you can hope for in the non-stochastic setting. And then in order to the fact that you cannot compete with the fixed floor, so you have to change a little bit your notion of regret. Then again, XP3 style algorithms are able to track the optimal action by further smoothing out the exponential distribution. So there are ways of addressing this non-stationary behavior and the seasonalities, so that basically your algorithm can be actually, you can prove that it's able to track the optimal floor in a sequence, provided this optimal floor doesn't change too quickly. Okay, there are some, but not going to elaborate on that. Okay, so let me give some conclusions. So real-time bidding is a very neat setting, motivating the studying of regret minimization algorithms with partial feedback. That's why I am happy as a theoretician. It's a beautiful source of data. It's very neat, and there's no almost. I mean, you can get your data and run your algorithms without any engineering. The engineering is on because you are living in your bubble. So there are many unsolved issues motivated by evolving practical constraints. There are many actors here. There's the ad exchange, there's seller side, the buyer side. Everybody is changing the game. So there are several constraints that arise all the time. And okay, you can study regret from buyer's perspective. There's very nice work recent by Vianney, Perchet, and Philippe Rigolet. Pardon my French, and they are looking at regret minimization for the buyer's perspective, and so there's some sort of duality in the approach that is very interesting to study. And last but not least, right, this is an example of an ML application that is not using deep learning yet, so I'm particularly proud of that. This is something. Okay, thank you a lot for your attention.
Thank you, Nicolo. So is there any question for Nicolo?
Just a quick question. What happened with the feature, the other one? Did you use them? You explained the hierarchical numerical.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Yes. So typically, like the real valued features, like position and stuff. Okay. So the timestamp it will help you to take into account the seasonalities. So in some sense, you can have different models for the weekend and the weekdays, or for holiday season stuff. For the other thing, it's okay. I want to be agnostic here. A natural idea would be, okay, let's assume a parametric model that is tying the bidder's behavior to the features. But this is risky because, again, I'm not aware of a sensible parametric model that will work here. So I'm actually looking at non-parametric Bandit models in order to approach this sort of the real valued features. So basically, what you want to do is you are assuming that there is a certain consistency in the optimal floor in a certain region around a set of features. Okay, so this is a classical non-parametric approach, and you can do it You can actually run this algorithm in a non-parametric way, efficiently, so to say. We hope so. So that's what we're planning to do. And then you can combine the hierarchical approach with the non-parametric approach, and everything will combine. But I don't know whether it will work.
Thank you.
So just to make sure that I understood, so you have these updates only on one side of the floor, right? So this means you're assuming that you don't know the second highest bit.
You never, well, sometimes you know it. If you clear the auction, then you know it. Then you can make a full update.
That's true, yeah.
Then you can actually make a full update.
But is it somehow, did you analyze how much you would gain by always knowing the second highest bit, let's say in the stochastic?
No, you will gain logarithmic factors, not more than that.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
That's what you can hope for.
Nicolò, on that graph you had of the example, do you mind going back to that, of the plot of the profits that were, accruing from the strategy?
Which one? The plot?
Where you showed how the gain in that one. Yeah,
this one.
Yeah. So I'm sort of strange. You'd have thought there would be. Why is that sort of then reverting to going parallel with?
Yes. So this is exploiting non-stationarities. So in this case, there's some change in the optimal price. So here, the algorithm is tracking the optimal price that is changing over time and is gaining something. It's a superlinear gain with respect to the zero reserve price. And then whenever things go back to stationary, you're going back to be parallel with the zero reserve price, which means that I don't know. I don't know, because you should be able to gain something a little bit. So I didn't, these are not really parallel. So you're not gaining a lot, but they're not parallel. So this apparently shows that the most that is there to be gained is by tracking the non-stationarities. So if you're really looking at, so this also tells you that this notion of regret might be not really good. But yeah, you're right. Some sense is saying that if competing with a single best price is not getting you a lot more than playing a zero reserve price in terms of net gain. Okay. Yeah. So this was designed to show that the algorithm is able to catch on the non-stationarities.
Okay, thank you.
So we might have time for one or two very short questions with short answer.
Good spot, by the way. You spotted that. I was hoping nobody was going to spot it. This guy.
Yes, I just have a question. How will the analysis change with incorporating the soft floor?
Ah, yeah. I deleted all auctions with soft floors. Right. This is really oblivious to the fact that the auction is designed in a certain way. What you really care about is the feedback structure and the shape, the sum properties of the revenue function. Okay. So the properties of the revenue function I was using is this kind of one-sided Lipschitzness, so things I could be didn't blow up. At most they crash it, and then I used the fact that I could do these updates that were could update more than I actually, not only the floor I played. So to the extent that these things are maintained, everything is going to be fine. So it's not really important that the incentive compatibility is not an issue here. I'm not claiming that, again, the buyers, the bidders could change their behavior in arbitrary ways. So I'm not exploiting the properties of the second price auctions. any other property than that. So yes, in principle, it could be taken into account, provided that these properties are preserved. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, if there's no more question, then you can thank Nicolo again. And I think we can safely return at 10:45. So it makes like a 12-minute break.